Councilmember Redmond.
Here.
Councilmember Sakla.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns. Mayor Pro Tem Kleur.
Here.
Mayor Collins. Mayor Collins.
Here. Well, I'm here. When this turns on, I'll be here. You got me now? There you go. We're going to go to the third agenda item, which is a special presentation by Eugene. And Eugene, you're going to have to help me if Eugene's here.
Last name is pronounced Sway.
Sway.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. He's going to make a presentation. He's going to make a presentation about the Mount Shasta office building. And folks, oh, you do have it queued up. Well, thank you, Eugene. We hear you. Please keep yourself close to your microphone so the audience watching at home can hear you. Thanks.
Oh, sure, of course. Shall I begin?
Anytime you're ready.
Okay. Hello, my name is Eugene Sway, and my wife, Elizabeth Montgomery, and I have been Mount Shasta property owners since 1998. We own a 7.3 acre parcel on Spring Hill Drive. We want to create a commercial building in which we can develop programs to help Mount Shasta residents of all ages to find jobs, careers, education, and originate new ideas that speak to the social, physical, and environmental challenges we all face to survive the future. In a sense, it is a center of interdisciplinary innovation. My screens are not moving, unfortunately. I'm not able to go forward. I don't know why.
Bear with us. 22nd Avenue, can you move the slides forward at Eugene's request?
I'm an architect with a PhD from UC Berkeley in architecture and education, and my wife is a PhD in sociology and education, with an international practice developing education programs for intergenerational students and teachers. We own this parcel on Spring Hill Drive, with views of Mount Shasta to the east, the Eddies Mountain Range to the west, Spring Hill to the south, and Black Butte to the north. This 7.3 acre parcel at Spring Hill Drive is bordered on the west side by I-80 freeway, on the north side by Mount Shasta Plumbing's open parcel, on the east side by Dr. Keith Orr's 242 residential acres, and on the south side by Spring Hill Lane. From the south, car access is by Abrams Lake exit off I-80 or North Mount Shasta Boulevard, and from the north by taking Abrams Lake exit I-80 to Spring Hill Drive. This aerial view shows the site, and you can see the Manzanita-filled 242 acre parcel on the upper east side, and the white-colored Spring Hill Lane to the right. Here's the topographic drawing of the entire site, showing the office building we wish to create with its 19 vehicle parking lot to the right. In the future, we'd like to create a cafe and gallery exhibition area and an added parking area on the left side of the parcel. Here's a view looking north from the site. You can see what used to be Les Schwab and Black Butte. And here's a view along Spring Hill Drive looking southward at the site, showing the 80-foot tall hillside at the middle of our parcel. Here's a view from Spring Hill Drive along Spring Hill Lane, eastward at Mount Shasta. Our property begins to the left of this road. This aerial view gives you a view of the actual context, showing the Manzanita hilly forested area to the east and the 80-foot high hill that is at the center of our property, between what's labeled Building A and Building B. Here you see how the building is set into the ground so that the natural landscaping is the body of the building itself. The building is burned with soil from the site 20 feet above ground level and planted with native landscaping. We have done underground water level testing, and the year-round levels are below 45 feet. The building appears like another natural hill on the site. We intend to plant new native trees on Spring Hill Drive and around the building to add to the flora and fauna of the site, and are considering using mountain magnolia, which is fragrant at different times of the year. Here's a view without the trees, showing how the south end of the building can take in south-facing sunlight and breezes that run south-north, north-south on the site. So natural, passive cooling and heating from breeze is a part of its design. This drawing shows the overall geometry of the building, which is like a giant teacup. A central spiral ramp contains a garden area, and 4 vertical stairway elevator cores lead to the roof for exiting. The building is constructed of wood and sheathed in gigacrete. It's a stucco-like material that is waterproof, fireproof, doesn't mold or mildew, is inexpensive, and has very little embedded energy in its manufacturing. A walkway bridge allows you to enter the building from a newly designed Spring Hill Drive covered bus stop or from the car and parking area next to the building. The basement floor level is for storage and archival materials. A secondary fire exiting level is a designated fire escape route from the central garden area and from the stairway cores, which contain fire sprinklers for the storage areas below. This is the main floor containing workspaces, classrooms, laboratories, shop areas, scale model making, technology development studios, offices, lecture and conference areas, food preparation, lavatories, janitorial rooms, a performance stage, and a reception area. This roof plan shows the placement of skylights, outdoor trellised work areas, and areas leading to a left side north hillside walkway bridge that goes up to the 80-foot high hill, and also to 4 stairway elevator cores. West elevation and cross-section views above show the exterior of the building surrounded by mountain magnolia trees and soil burn. And the cross-section view below shows the central roof-supporting garden structure. To summarize, the building is 19,000 square feet. It occupies a 7.3 acre lot. The building occupies 1/17 of the site. And it should be noted that this C2 zone, that we could cover 100% of the parcel and build 50 feet high. We are not doing that. In addition to standard lavatories, to emphasize the commitment of this building to reach for true zero impact on its environment, we will install some sawdust toilets to let people get used to waterless lavatories. These waterless sawdust toilets are already used in at least 11 other countries, such as England, Germany, Sweden, New Zealand, Peru, Australia, and Canada. We may also incorporate aerotecture windmills, which will lay horizontally on the roof. They're transparent, they don't harm birds, they move slowly, and are completely silent. Part of our education directive is to demonstrate the use of roof gardens, which is still an underused opportunity for everyone to grow their own food and to be in full control of their diet. Our driveways, parking areas, and roof will be lit at night with Canadian-made luminescent stones and pebbles, which use no electricity and thus have no destructive footprint on the environment. Among the many restorative technologies we will introduce is the gravity-powered light fixture, which creates light equivalent to a 100-watt bulb simply by allowing the fixture to fall slowly downward from the ceiling to the floor about every 30 minutes and then reposition them on the ceiling to fall again. To summarize, we want our building to be a place that gives any person the skills, the imagination, the confidence, the motivation to believe they can achieve what they thought was impossible, no matter what their background or age. And our building itself, being totally aligned with nature, becomes an example to show that the answers we seek are within the workings of nature, and we must seek the answers before it's too late. We want to help the people of Mount Shasta find the economic means, the social and environmental insight, the intellectual strength and determination to find meaning and purpose in their lives, to think innovatively and with originality, and share this with the community to help invent the future. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight to introduce this project. We'd like to play a positive role in Mount Shasta's future evolution. And I'm open to questions if you have any at this moment. You should know that in general, this is an incubator for solving the problems of the future now. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene.
Can I add a comment to this presentation? Is it okay if I add a comment to this presentation?
Oh, sure,
Please.
please.
I think,
By all means.
you know, one of the things that Eugene and I have been talking about, and that may not have come through in this presentation, it has, but you kind of have to know a little bit more about the technology as you're watching this, is one of the things that's happening is in this design, you're mimicking natural systems, and doing what you can to produce, basically moving towards net zero, where you're producing energy on site. You're taking advantage of the winds and the local climate to take care of your heating and cooling needs within the building. And there's kind of a living, breathing component to the building that
Yes.
is cutting edge. I worked
Yes.
on a living building in Portland where it was to be the first living building high-rise. And it would actually take care of all black water, gray water, and garbage on site, and would produce more electricity than it would be off the grid, and we'd be able to sell electricity, back to the power companies. And this is
Yes.
playing on a lot of this theme.
Yes, I didn't mention this. This could be possibly the first true zero energy building in America, because although by law we have to have the air conditioning, ventilation, and heating systems, and mechanical systems as part of the building, we are going to shut those off and show that the building can passively cool, heat, and ventilate itself. So, and by doing so, and by creating our own electricity through human movement and through gravity systems like the light fixtures I showed you, this could be the first true zero energy building in America. And so that's what we're trying to achieve, that we want to show the world that it is possible to create true zero energy, not net zero, but true zero. And that means that human beings have to be a part of the energy creation themselves. And that's what we want to create. So thank you very much. That is a very important point of the design. I didn't want to get too much into that because I thought that should be saved for the planning department. But yes, that is an important component. So thanks.
So there was one more comment. When I was going through these slides with Eugene, there was an element listed about job creation. And
Yes.
my first initial reaction was that it appeared tacked on in that, we need, better paying jobs to bring kids back that want to work in the area. Or just basically create jobs in general. And, I was disabused of that notion that the idea that these were creating high-tech green jobs in the green infrastructure economy, exactly for the reason of bringing new generations back so they can live near their families. Anyway,
Yes,
I'll shut up for now.
yes,
So-
that's a very important factor of this, is that we want to create jobs and show students how we all know and we all have a feel that the careers of the future, the jobs of the future aren't even created yet. And so we have to understand how to anticipate and originate new ideas that create those jobs. And so what this would become is an incubator for that, so that we can keep our new generation of people here by having them learn to create their own kind of jobs. And that's part of the mechanism of this education environment is to create and anticipate what those new jobs might be.
Thank you, Eugene. Questions from the council?
Eugene, I've been excited about your project for some time now. How close are you to presenting the project proposal to the Planning Commission?
We're almost there. If it depends on if I don't think the Planning Commission requires engineering, so I think we have everything we need already to present to the Planning Commission. So we're there.
John?
Eugene, thank you for your presentation. Once it hits Planning Commission, what is your timeline for construction, and how long do you think until it's completed?
We could start construction, you probably get a feel that because of COVID, that the whole construction industry and people who are involved in that industry are no longer around. So we have to start again to collect those specialized people to be a part of the construction team. And so a lot depends on finding the right people, because the people that were there 3 years ago are no longer there. So it's hard to say, but I'd say once we get planning approval, within 3 to 4 months, we should be starting construction. I forgot to mention that we do have to to complete the structural engineering. So however long that takes, I would say give it another 3 months after that to begin construction. So there's that engineering factor involved.
And have you run the numbers on how many jobs you're anticipating this would provide?
Yes, we have, and we've come up with approximately over 100 jobs. Because we want to create a program where we invite the public to learn about what we're doing. And that brings a lot of students, a lot of younger people to become docents, to become people who are guides, so that the public can understand more fully what we're trying to achieve. And I think that will be a great asset to the community, because the young people will then meet people from all over the world to tell them about what we're doing and what Mount Shasta is. And so I think it's a great public outreach to have students involved in this. And we see that from that we can generate a lot of new kinds of jobs, because we're inventing new things, and that invention will ignite a lot of new kinds of job possibilities. And by the way, I didn't mention that we're creating an outreach to universities. I have direct relationships with UC Berkeley, with Caltech, with Stanford and UCLA and USC. So we want to make this place a satellite campus for those universities. And I think we can do that, so that this would be a direct feed from Mount Shasta to those universities to stimulate our young generation of people go directly from their high school experience to these kinds of universities, and then to come back and contribute to expanding on the programs that we're creating now. So I see this as a wonderful intergenerational and multiple generation building of education and jobs and new ideas. And I think that that's really going to stimulate and generate a lot of excitement to the community.
Thank you. And last question is, what's the anticipated cost for the project?
To create the first part of the building is about $3 to $4 million, and then to create we're wanting to create the parking areas, all of the surfacing of the environment would be made from soilcrete. And we found a contractor that does soilcrete in the area, and that's where you mix the natural soil with cement to create a very natural form of surface areas. And so we haven't really decided we haven't really determined what the cost of that will be, but it won't be anywhere near what the buildings are. So I would say that the total cost of this portion of the buildings and the surface would be somewhere around $5 million.
Thank you, Eugene. Really appreciate you staying to answer some questions. Wish you all the best on this.
Sure. And please, and I'd like to invite every one of you, anyone who's interested in this, to contact me. And I think the city manager has my contact information. And I know that some of you, the city council people, also have that. So please, at any time of the day or night, please contact me by email or telephone if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer everything, any inquiries you have, because as you can see, I'm very excited about this project. I think this is something that defines my work, and I think it'll be something that defines Mount Shasta. And so the people that work with me, the team I have in Mount Shasta, and myself, and my family, we're all very excited about the potential of this project. So please feel free to contact me anytime about it.
Thank you, Eugene. We're going to move on to agenda item number 4, which is public comment. If you'd like to come up and speak on something that is not on the agenda, now's the time to do it. Do we have a list or? Nobody signed up? Okay. Anybody online?
Yes, we do have one hand raised.
Yeah. Sure. Come on up. It just needs your name and where you live.
Larry Stock, living in Mount Shasta.
Well, I know that, Larry, but
1129 Oak Street. I want to talk about our wildfire situation and insurance. I'm an insurance broker, and we have never had so few carriers that we have ever had at this point in time. It's now getting to the point where insurers are canceling commercial policies, and that has not been happening. There's a lot of factors involved, and I'd like to maybe put myself on the agenda, or maybe make this an agenda item so we can address it a little further. But there's several different points. One, we have current mappings of our area. These are done by vendors that decide what your wildfire mapping looks like. And that has a lot to do with what we have around our community. So an example, the Roseburg property. The Roseburg property is causing a lot of problems with anyone within a quarter mile of that place. Literally seeing non-renewals from every carrier when it comes to anyone within that area. Whether you're down at the fitness center, you're over on Ream Avenue, you're by my house on Old Mill Road or Oak Street. It doesn't matter. We're seeing none. And when we go to look for the markets, there's no market available. They don't want to insure the property. They'll give us liability only. So it's going to get serious, and people are going to be upset. The Roseburg property is a major. I know you guys are looking at it. I know Jonathan's been working on it. but it's got to happen. And I'm begging you, it's got to happen. It's got to happen soon. And any other properties that you have control of. Two, wildfire defense and construction practices. We have WUI guidelines, Wildland Urban Interface guidelines for construction. And it's hit or miss as if the building department's requiring it or not. We're getting a mapping right now from Nationwide saying that if you're within 5,280 feet, 1 mile of their wildfire line, they're going to non-renew you. And we're building inside the city limits, and I think in the county as well, in certain areas that are not being required WUI. And that's just a difference in construction practices with, the siding, the soffits being closed in, venting, type of roof, clearances, things like that. Most things that are already happening, we do have fire suppression that's happening in all residential, but there's a lot more that can be done there, and it's something that's in your control. And then, I know I'm running out of time here. Third, the Department of Insurance, Ricardo Lara, has complete authority to fix this problem, and he will not spread the risk. Right now, a rate filing with them is taking 300 days, and then at the end of 300 days, they reject your application, and you have to resubmit it. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Anybody else like to come up and speak? Anybody online?
Yes. Our next speaker will be Johanna.
Hi, good evening, City Council. I just want to say I was really excited to hear Eugene's presentation, and I think that would be a super positive way forward for Mount Shasta and our world, really. I mean, so I hope that's something that is moves forward. And so I just wanted to say that Eugene, thank you for your foresight and environmentalism and all of that. That's wonderful. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Johanna. And that's it for public comment. We'll bring it to council and staff comments. City Manager, can we start with you?
Yeah, an update on a couple projects. The Matrix Fire and Police Consolidation Study, there's one jurisdiction that they haven't gotten a response from, but they're going to have something for me in writing next week, and I'll know whether they're ready for putting together a presentation and bringing it to council. So that's on the docket. We had a meeting with Raftelli's, who you may recall is doing our stormwater drainage infrastructure study. And the holdup for them has been that they were trying to use readily available aerial images that had enough resolution to tell the portion of the city that had pervious versus impervious surfaces. And they found that the just generally available aerial footage just wasn't cutting it. So they had a hard time nailing down a private company that had reasonable rates to get us really clear images. Now they have that, and they're working at it, and we're going to have something pretty soon. In the meantime, part of this, once we get a number, depending on the type of property of what we need to fix our failing drainage infrastructure, we'll go through a 218 process. In the meantime, there is an expert on Raftelli's staff on the infrastructure bill, now law, and there are 3 potential projects that are going over to Raftelli's. They're going to write the grants for us for those 3 projects, and one of the projects that they have for consideration above and beyond drainage is the potential to take on an active transportation grant application for the idea of a couplet, one-way Mount Shasta and Chestnut. And one of the things that I was made aware of is apparently there was a study in 2011 that surveyed property owners, business owners on both Chestnut and Mount Shasta, and found that there wasn't a majority support for changing to one-ways, and it may be worth going about a city-led study using the basis of the last study just to gauge, if this is the direction council wants to go, to gauge where people really are and whether they want this to happen. And so that's what I've got.
If I can comment on that, a lot of the business owners on Mount Shasta Boulevard who were there more than 10 years ago have changed. More recently, DEAC, probably 3 years ago, took the pulse of business owners on Mount Shasta Boulevard, 300 block, and they were very interested in the one-way couplet, one-way streets. So,
Was that information formalized in a study? Do you as a body want me to move forward with this application, or do you want me to make sure that we're on the right track with the people that are on Chestnut and Mount Shasta first, as council?
Speaking for myself, I would want to move forward with the application. I think we have enough stuff.
Okay.
Oh, no council comments, but I feel the same way about
Okay.
moving forward with the application.
I have a council comment.
You got one more?
I was appointed to the Governance, Transparency, and Labor Relations Policy for the League of Cities state level, so I will do us proud in representing Mount Shasta. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where do you find the time?
Make it.
Make it indeed. I wanted to make one comment before we move on to committee updates. Just this evening, we had Eugene Sway talk about a potential development. We've got two others, one a bed and breakfast, one a cannabis operation or potential cannabis operation. So just on tonight's agenda, there are 3 potential projects for the city. And one of the things, after 8 years, tonight's my last night as mayor, and I just wanted to say after 8 years on the city council, I'm pretty comfortable, not just speaking for myself, but for the rest of the council, that we are a steady, smart, pro-growth council. And what that means is that we're not looking for ways to have things not happen. We're looking for ways to have things actually happen. And this being a diverse community, you can imagine that that doesn't mesh with everybody, but that's our job because we represent everybody. And that's all. So on, any committee updates, city manager?
The DEAC committee met, and there were some more esoteric items, including power box art that we haven't resolved yet with the power company. But the 2 things that we focused on is one of the members of the committee has a degree in design and came up with a pretty elaborate set of sketches for redesigning Parker Plaza for a performance space and area for public seating and some parking. I'm waiting for some dimensioning on that, and it's pretty. It looks like a pretty solid design. But once I have dimensioning on that, I can have Public Works Director, our oncoming Public Works Director, who starts December 5th. As well as our building inspector to take a look at it and see if this is something viable and something that we want to move forward on. The other issue they hit on was there has been a long-going discussion about the location of the Flower of Life statue at Chestnut and Mount Shasta. And I instructed the group that they need to make sure that they can make it snowplow proof. And they hired Wairika, an engineering company in Wairika, and they said they can't guarantee that they could make it snowplow proof. Could not. And so they are reassessing and determining a new place for that sculpture to be placed.
Thank you. Question? We're going to move on to agenda item number 7. It's the consent agenda. First of all, is there any city councilors like to remove, add, amend?
I don't want to remove anything, but on 7E, the resolution CCR 22- whatever, adjusting the composition of the beautification committee, I request that we amend the language on page 31, first bullet, second line, to insert the words, the agenda, after providing. So it reads, providing the agenda to the deputy city clerk. That's it. And with that, if there are no other discussion, I would move council's approval of the consent agenda items A through E, which you're probably going to specifically announce.
Yeah, I need to announce them first. The consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A is approval of the minutes, November 14th, 2022, for the regular city council meeting. B is the approval of disbursements from accounts payable, November 14th and 16th, for the total gross payroll and taxes for the period ending November 13th, 2022. C is the police department report for October 2022. D is the committee minutes for the beautification committee for October 26, 2022. And finally, the resolution CCR-22-37, adjusting the composition of the beautification committee with the amendments that Councilmember Stearns proposed.
Move to approve consent agenda items A through E by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's swearing in time, not swearing at time, just so we're clear. John, you want to direct us where we're going here? You're the man here.
Perhaps that we can have Jeffrey and John come up, people that got to be sworn into the city council. Even though you've been here before. All right, what I'd like to have you do is repeat after me. I state your name. Raise your hand.
I, Jeffrey Collins,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I will take this obligation freely
I will take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well,
and that I will well
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
So congratulations.
Agenda item number 9 is the council selection of the mayor and mayor pro tem. Kathy, you want to introduce this to us?
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor Collins, members of the council. In November or December of each year, the council selects a member to serve as mayor and a member to serve as mayor pro tem for the following year. For tonight's process, I will open the floor for nominations for the position of mayor. Once all nominations have been made, a vote will be taken to close the floor. I will then take a roll call vote for each council member nominated in the order the nominations were received. Once one council member has received a majority of votes, he or she will be deemed as selected as the mayor, and there will be no further votes. Once the mayor is seated, the meeting will be turned over to him or her to preside over the vote for mayor pro tem and the remainder of the meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions. No questions? Seeing no questions, I'm going to go ahead and open the floor for public comment prior to nominations. And I see no public comment, so I will go ahead and open the floor for nominations for the position of mayor.
I nominate the mayor pro tem, Tessa Clore, for mayor.
Anybody want to second that nomination, or is that how that works?
No, we don't require a
not-
second. Are there any further nominations? Seeing none, do I have a motion to close the floor?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to close the floor for nominations for the position of mayor. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so we'll go ahead and take the vote for the position of mayor for Councilmember Kleur. Councilmember Redmond?
Aye, yes.
Councilmember Kleur?
Aye.
Councilmember Stackla?
Aye.
Councilmember Stearns?
Aye.
Councilmember Collins?
Aye.
Congratulations, Mayor Kleur. I will turn the meeting over to you. Please take your position at the dais.
Going someplace else, but I'll sit here temporarily.
Okay, will you move to the mayor pro tem part? So now we need to open up for nominations for pro tem.
I nominate John Stackcliffe.
And I'll nominate Tim Stearns.
Any other nominations? Then Kathy, do you take over from here?
Nope, it's all you.
Okay.
Seeing that there's no further nominations, to do a motion and a second to close the floor.
Okay, do I have a motion to close the floor?
Motion to close.
Second.
Okay, and we'll do a roll call for the first nominee, which was John
Do
Stackla.
the vote to close the floor first. We have a motion and a second to close the floor.
Oh, all those in favor to close the floor?
Aye.
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 So now we'll do the roll call vote for the position of mayor pro tem. The first person nominated was Councilmember Stackla. Councilmember Redmond.
Aye.
Councilmember Collins.
Nay.
Councilmember Stackla.
Aye.
Councilmember Stearns.
Nay.
Mayor Kleur.
Aye. Since that passed with 3, then this is
Councilmember
closed.
Stackla is mayor pro tem.
Congratulations.
It's immediate. It's official.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item 10, public hearing. Do we have Kyle on line for us, or Todd, do you want to introduce this to us?
So I believe Kyle's online to introduce this topic.
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you want to read the agenda item?
Sure. So the agenda item we have, excuse my pronunciation, but Velaswamy Sequa exemption adoption and bed and breakfast appeal.
Yeah, first of all, just want to check, can I be heard okay in there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, my name is Kyle Rathbone. I'm a contract planner with TRC, and I've been helping the city with filling in for city planning work these past few months. And yeah, I can give an introduction and description of this agenda item. So this project appeal is for the approval of a conditional use permit and CEQA exemption adoption for the conversion and operation of a recently renovated residence to a bed and breakfast consisting of 3 rooms for a total occupancy of 6 guests, with 6 parking spaces to be made available behind the home and breakfast to be offered to guests daily. The project is located at 1005 South Mount Shasta Boulevard in C1 downtown commercial zoning. So this application with required submittal elements was accepted for review on June 22nd. This proposed bed and breakfast would have 3 rooms to serve a total of 6 guests. Parking spaces for at least 6 cars would be made available behind the residence, connected via an alleyway to Old McLeod Road and Holly Street. No change in building square footage would occur. No other structures or off-site improvements are proposed, and no signage is proposed. The included breakfast is planned to be offered through an arrangement with a nearby eatery. The conversion and operation of the proposed bed and breakfast would be required to adhere to all state and local requirements, including for occupation, sanitation, and fire safety. So this project went before the Planning Commission on October 18th. The commissioners discussed the appropriateness of approving the project as a bed and breakfast, given that breakfast would not be offered on site and that no owner or staff would regularly be on the premises, and that the whole building may be rented out to guests, not just individual rooms. Aside from these issues, the commission agreed that the site location and details were desirable for a bed and breakfast, and the commission voted 3-2 to deny the conditional use permit. This project was found to qualify for a categorical exemption to CEQA, Class 1 existing facilities, and Class 4 minor alterations to land due to the lack of a significant change in use or development, which would not result in substantial alterations to the land or environment. So given that the site location and zoning details are quite favorable for transient occupancy for bed and breakfast, and given that the project's details don't explicitly violate any provisions of the city's code section on bed and breakfasts, staff recommends adopting the exemption and approving the project with conditions of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle.
If I can add something to this, there is, the crux of this comes down to what the definition of a bed and breakfast is in the code. And we all know and smell a bed and breakfast when we see it. It's somebody on site that serves breakfast. The problem with our ordinance is that there is, the intention was there to say, clearly to define a bed and breakfast. Unfortunately, they use the word to provide breakfast as opposed, provide breakfast as opposed to, to serve breakfast. And so, when the Planning Commission turned this down, they felt that the reason for turning this down is it was clearly, in their view, not a bed and breakfast at all, but rather was a way to skirt the short-term rental moratorium. Whether or not that's true, that's up to this body to decide. So I just wanted to add that level of context.
Okay, clarifying questions, anyone?
Yeah, to Kyle, is he still on?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, so this is John Stackfleth. So you mentioned at the very last part of your statement that there were conditions. What in particular did you have in mind there as far as those conditions for going forward with the project?
Yeah, it's also on the staff report. I don't know if you have that in front of you, but I just had some basic ones of for it to comply with all state and local regulations for bed and breakfasts, which can include a maximum of 2 consecutive weeks of occupancy. Also comply with all state and local requirements governing occupancy, fire safety, and sanitation. That at least 3 off-street parking spaces shall be made available for guests, which is also a requirement of the code provision. And then that an offering of daily breakfast be included for guests, included within a single stated price, which is also a requirement of the bed and breakfast provision.
Okay, yeah, I did read that. Thanks for spelling it out for everyone.
Sure.
So we are dealing with an appeal with respect to the Planning Commission's decision. Hypothetically, let's say we approve the appeal and it goes forward, there still could be a denial of license or so forth if these conditions are not met, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Kyle, I sat on this City Council when we adopted this ordinance, the bed and breakfast inns ordinance. And we had discussion at that time about the requirement to have a on-site manager or have the owner living on site. We determined that that was a requirement. My understanding is there is no intention to have the owner or have a on-site manager living at the premises. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So from my perspective, your proposal does not meet the intent of the ordinance that we adopted. Let me go further. When I read this, it certainly sounds like this would be a short-term residential or short-term rental. Why is it not? We have a moratorium on short-term rentals at this point.
Yes. With the owner occupation, I don't see an explicit requirement in the code section for bed and breakfasts that a owner must be on site. But maybe that's just a different interpretation from what the actual meaning of the ordinance has.
Well, we certainly indicated at 18.21.061 off-street parking that there had to be parking in addition to the parking that was required for the occupying owner or manager. And that's consistent with the intent that we had that a bed and breakfast in Mount Shasta would have an on-site owner or manager there. It was also our intent that the B&B would be serving meals. And to me, the word providing is synonymous with serving. So, frankly, I don't think that what you're proposing, well, I'll tell you, I cannot vote in favor of the proposal for the reasons that I've cited.
Jeffrey? John?
Forgive me, I don't have much of a voice rooting for Michigan over those idiots to the south this weekend. But
John, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
yeah, like I said, I'm sorry, I don't have much of a voice right now. Anyways, I am...
Might bring that microphone closer to you.
Sorry.
There we go.
Yeah, like I said, lost my voice this weekend. As far as the parking, was there 3 in the back, and there was needed to be some provided on the street that they were no longer public parking?
There's spaces available for 6, which exceeds the standard of 3 spaces would be
Okay.
required for one of this size.
Okay. Trying not to talk too much here, but I don't think I'm in favor of this either. I'm impressed with the creativity of getting around the STRs, calling it a bed and breakfast with nobody on site and no breakfast being served, but it's a creative way to get around our moratorium, is how I see it.
If this helps, I've got it pulled up, the definition of bed and breakfast under Mount Shasta Municipal Code. Bed and breakfast or B&B inns and facilities means the rental of rooms or space within a new or existing structure for the purpose of providing overnight accommodations for paying guests with not more than 1 meal, that being breakfast, to be provided daily to residents of the inn. The entire section offered is to be included in one stated price.
Any other questions? Okay, now we will provide the appellant 15 minutes. Please come on up, Sandra.
Good evening. You guys can hear me okay? So I'm here on behalf of the owners, Brian and Andy, and they are actually on Zoom as well. So if you have questions for them directly, you can ask them as well. Throughout this process, I've been involved from beginning to end. And the reason we are doing the bed and breakfast, and we have read the materials thoroughly, and we're doing this because they are here in Mount Shasta. What came up at the planning meeting was, well, why aren't you there? Why aren't you cooking? Why aren't you serving? As you know, in today's world, there are a million different diets, and if you have someone living there, cooking there, you don't know who you're going to get, what you're going to get, what time, if they're allergic, if they're not allergic. So this was a way for them to say, we're going to provide breakfast to our guests that are coming. They can pick what they want, and it happens to be next door at Seven Sons, and so we are working locally with them so that they are getting what they need and what the city requires for this bed and breakfast to occur. And so I just wanted to give you a couple. Obviously, you heard that it went to planning and was denied, and the reason they gave us was that they didn't like the idea. And they also said they didn't have any pictures of any kind of the current building, so and what it looked like. So I actually brought for you packets for all of you to review and look at. And so if I can come forward and hand these to you. There should be 10, so there should be one for everybody here. And what you're going to see is the before pictures of what this property looked like before it was renovated and what it looks like now. And a couple facts for you. So the last time that this property was a residence or lived in as a residence was 2003. In 2003, it was converted to a hairdressing salon. And at that time, it has been listed on and off since 2003. It sold in May 21 after being on the market for 203 days to some folks from the city. Then it sat empty until November because those folks decided to change their mind and not do anything with the property. So you had an empty building sitting on the boulevard with absolutely no use, stagnant. And then Brian and Andy purchased it and went back on the market in November of 21. They purchased it in January of 22, and they have spent over $200,000 locally with our community renovating it to the pictures that you see in front of you. You also have a copy of the plans, what was permitted, and the layout of the actual property itself. So throughout this process, there has not ever been a stipulation that someone must live in the property and cooking breakfast. Had that been the case, we wouldn't have come through this route. We did this because this is what they want to do. These owners live out of the area. They frequent this area on a regular basis. They were staying in Airbnbs and spending a significant amount of money doing that when they came up here. And they chose to invest in Mount Shasta, and what they felt they were missing when they visited their Airbnbs is what they are now giving back with a bed and breakfast. They liked to go out to the different restaurants and pick and choose what they wanted to do when they were here. So now they have a bed and breakfast, and they're saying, here are guests, we want to provide this to you, and we're going to include it in your rent or your rate that you're staying, but you get to pick where you want to go, rather than being cooked for them. So it is actually providing housing back to Mount Shasta that has not been in this unit since 2003. So you have any questions for me? I'm happy to answer some. If you have any questions for them, they are online. Go ahead.
Were the interior photographs and the schematic of the rooms on this property, or of this property, submitted to the Planning Commission?
The schematic was, and the old pictures were, but the new pictures, yes. So they were given the entire packet by Kyle. Those were available. It was not asked for by planning. I actually pulled it up at the meeting, but they did not want to see it at the meeting because it had not been given to them in a packet, so they refused to look at it. And then the interior pictures, the new pictures you have in front of you, were not provided because the property was not complete and had not been signed off yet. All Trade Services did over $215,000 worth of work on this property, and so we hadn't gotten pictures yet of the property.
So how is this not a short-term rental?
Well, the difference between a short-term rental and a bed and breakfast is food. A hotel provides a buffet downstairs where they can come and go as they please. This is essentially the same thing. It is providing food for the guests to use when they want to. And it's given to them every morning.
Hi. We're in a bit of a pickle here. We do have a short-term rental moratorium on, and have had one for quite some time.
Correct.
I would suggest that the difference between a short-term rental and a bed and breakfast is defined by the 1994 ordinance, which says and includes an occupying owner-manager. No owner-manager, short-term rental. Owner-manager, bed and breakfast.
Okay.
I can move past the diversions
Okay.
or the distinctions between all different diets that are out there and
Sure.
giving somebody a per diem or however it's going to work to
Right.
go elsewhere. I can get past the breakfast part, but we were real clear that a bed and breakfast, as all the ones that are in town do, have an occupying owner manager. Help me past that.
So through the planning and all the meetings with the city and the conversations and putting the packet together and drawing all the plans, that was never brought to our attention by anybody that it had to be lived in. Even the description that was just read does not state that. And when I called and started this process back in May and talked with everyone at the city and said, this is our intent, will this work for this location, for this property? Absolutely. And that was, everything was put forward and very clearly described in the packet as to what was being provided.
Yeah, the house, its location is great to be a short-term rental or a bed and breakfast. It's in the commercial district. It's been vacant for a while. All those things you know to say, yeah, let's bring this back on. I'm making statements instead of asking questions. So my pickle part is kind of unresolved here at the moment. I'll listen some more and see if we can figure this out.
No, I'm just going to go, so, sounds like we have a semantic discussion going here about the definition of a bed and breakfast. So I'm scrolling through the phone, looking at different definitions, and they generally conclude that, sure, owners will sometimes, not always, live at their property. So without question, there are bed and breakfasts without the owners living there. I know that. We'll take an example. Would you not call the McLeod Hotel a bed and breakfast if the owners, who I know personally, decided to buy a house down the road? They'd be serving breakfast there, still be a bed and breakfast. I don't think it's a qualifying definition, and I don't think it's clear in our statutes. So that's my comment about that one. Regarding the food, help me out here, but if you were to offer food there, you would have to create a commercial kitchen, correct?
I mean, yeah, I would imagine if you are cooking on the premises, it would have to be certified by the health department, correct?
Yeah.
Alternatively, I think if a requirement of council was, in order for this to get passed, was that the food be served to the guests, then we will arrange to have breakfast served to the guests every morning. And it could be...
You would hire a caterer? Is that what you're getting at?
Or we could have someone go next door, purchase the goods that have been cooked in a commercial kitchen, and have them delivered by 8 o'clock that morning, every morning a guest is there. So that's an alternative too. So if it's a matter of serving breakfast as opposed to the guests going to get breakfast, that's something that can be written into the policy that states that will be done.
Okay, so a little bit more. So this plan, this was an issue in some of the commentaries against this project.
Because they did not have it.
Okay, so is this completed?
It is finished. All the interior pictures, you have...
So we're at about $250,000 for this, and you could spend more, or are they finished?
Oh, no, it's done.
Okay.
They intend to, there is a downstairs space that at some time in the future, when they can start receiving funds back from their investment, because it went over budget by about 25% that they were expected, they intend to add more housing downstairs that would be long-term, but that's a whole nother project.
Okay, so this is a transient occupancy type situation in a very commercial district.
Correct.
And we are, to me, arguing about semantics regarding definitions, and the definition is that of a bed and breakfast. Sounds like these people want to make a go of this business-wise, and I hate to think that we're stopping people from actually completing their projects when they're complete. So anyhow, I think you know where I stand on this.
One more question. If you can answer this, I'd be grateful. Todd, this may involve you or anybody else. Do we have any bed and breakfast in this town that has a non-owner occupied scenario?
I don't know.
Summit Lofts. Summit Lofts.
The loft is a long-term rental.
Well, no, two of them are, but others aren't. And I believe the loft falls literally under while it has 2 units that are longer-term rental, the other ones are, it's motel.
Mike, I have a question, and I think the problem is Councilmember Collins, your definition includes owner-manager on-site, while city managers, I did not hear that semantics coming from your definition, so we need to find which one.
If I may read from the 1994 statute, on off-street parking space, one off-street parking space for each rental room, in addition to the existing required off-street parking for the occupying owner-manager. We were clear saying there's a bed and breakfast, got to have a parking space for the occupying owner-manager.
but it doesn't state that it's required. If there's an occupying manager, they have to have a parking spot in addition to the extra.
You have done a great job of pointing out
I
that.
forgot what that's called, but there's some logical fallacy what you're talking about here. The fact that there's an existing attribute doesn't mean it's a requirement to do the project. There's no connection necessarily. Because there's an attribute, or maybe an attribute there, that somehow translates into a requirement for the actual project. The big problem here is that somebody was operating under the assumption that they were doing good and doing right, and then very recently they were told they could not finish. That's the somewhat injustice of this. It's a $200,000 investment. They were operating under a certain set of beliefs. That was terminated. They're trying their best to make this project move forward. And if you don't see that as the problem, it's kind of the problem Mount Shasta's had with a lot of things regarding projects, and I think you should think about that. Regardless of your personal feelings towards the current person standing up here, okay?
And I know that there is the moratorium. Everyone's well aware of that. I manage 350 rentals in this town. I'm well aware of what happens. All of them are licensed Airbnbs, or, I mean, they're all licensed if they need to be. There's nothing that is not licensed. I don't do anything not by the book, is what I'm trying to say. So, you know, what do you need to do? I mean, they're here. Why don't you ask them a question and see if you, instead of me being the on-site person, do you have a question for Brian and Andy? Or
Sandra, let me ask you this. I know that you manage a lot of rentals, short-term rentals and long-term rentals in Mount Shasta. If the city council were to adopt your reasoning that the difference between a short-term rental and a bed and breakfast is food, what prevents those short-term rentals that currently exist, that you're currently managing, to turn into bed and breakfasts simply by bringing in food?
what prevents them? They're already licensed. The ones that I manage in town are already licensed and permitted.
Well, I understand, but you say those are different than a bed and breakfast because they don't provide food.
Correct, they are
They could become a
Airbnbs.
bed and breakfast simply by giving a coupon or bringing in some food? Is that,
If the owners want to take on that extra added expense, then yes, they could become a bed and breakfast that route.
You know, part of the problem that we do have here, maybe the ordinance is poorly written, and part of the problem, I think, is the fact that we have a lot of people who weren't around in 1994. Sandra Studer, I think, was probably our deputy city clerk in 1994. She kept very detailed minutes of our meetings, and to the extent that we may have a question as to what the intent was back in 1994, what the ordinance was designed to be and do, perhaps we should obtain those 1994 minutes. They're available in City Hall.
Any other questions for the appellant or for the owners online? Okay, then I am going to officially open public hearing, which will be our public comment for this agenda item.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience wish to come forward and speak to this? Anyone online?
Our first speaker online will be Johanna.
Hello, Johanna. You have 3 minutes.
Good evening again. So I guess the big question in my mind is, in most definitions that I've read, the STR, when I Google the legal definition of a bed and breakfast, it says bed and breakfast means a type of food service establishment that is a transient lodging facility which is the owner or innkeeper's personal residence, is occupied by the owner or innkeeper at the time of rental to an in-house guest, and in which breakfast is the only meal served. Now, I've seen other cities in the country, and their definition, which I've previously sent to you, says that an STR includes anything that is a short-term rental, including a bed and breakfast, including a vacation rental. So anything that is short-term by definition falls into that category. So anyway, and when I attended the PC meeting, and they were concerned with not having a floor plan. And I guess my biggest concern about this is that it's circumventing the intent of the STRs. And we've had a lot of discussion in our town about STRs and the impact on long-term housing. And as much as this seems like it's a great location to have such an establishment, if we make an exception for them, everyone else will want to step in line and have the same exception. And then how are we going to hold back that tide? So I see that this could impact the STR moratorium and the intent of what is happening with that. And as far as the $200,000 investment, that actually goes to improve property value for the owners upon resale. So that's not an entire, they're not doing that just for the guests. I would venture, because I would think they would want a nicer place to live in as well. So anyway, so there are other cities that have adopted ordinances that have had the legal definition that I've previously sent to you, where STRs do include these, the whole, that include bed and breakfasts and vacation rentals. So anyway, so I'm just concerned about the impact this has on the STRs. Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna. Anyone else?
Our next speaker will be Andy Velaswamy.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Andy Velaswamy, and I'm here with Brian, my partner, and we are the owners of the property. Our property manager, Sandra, has sort of represented the situation really well. I just wanted to pipe in as well and just say thank you for considering what we're doing and really restate the intent of what we wanted to do, which is basically we've been visitors to Mount Shasta for many, many years, for over a decade now, and we decided to buy a home in Mount Shasta earlier this year. What we would very much like to do with the bed and breakfast is, in the commercial district, right on the boulevard, allow people to enjoy Mount Shasta and the businesses there, the restaurants, the recreation, everything that the city has in many of the same ways that Ryan and I have been enjoying Mount Shasta over the years. And that is really our intent here. We thought it was the perfect place, given it was in a commercial district, and is a place that is frequented by a lot of folks from out of town and has a lot of businesses in the area. And our intent really was that we could bring more folks into Mount Shasta and have people enjoy the businesses and enjoy the city in the same ways we have. I know there's a lot of technical. There's a large technical conversation happening in terms of the statutes and various things that you all need to consider, and I really do appreciate your time on this. But I just wanted to kind of comment and share what my intent and what our intent of the business was. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andy. Okay, with no other public comment, we will close the public hearing, bring it back for council discussion.
To adjourn?
Yes.
We're still in a pickle, which is there are clearly conflicting aspects of this project. But I was listening to Councilmember Stackfleth, and I think the resolution of the pickle is we screwed up. We made an ordinance without a specific set of criteria that clearly said owner occupied. Breakfast is changing for everybody anyway. That's not the issue. The issue is owner occupied. But we didn't say that. And throughout the process, that's not what they've been told. They've been told, nope, you're following the law, that you're doing the right thing. They've been told, this is how you do it if you want to do it in Mount Shasta. And here we are at 2 minutes to 12 telling them, no, you can't do it. And the location of the place is good. I just wanted to surprise my friend and colleague, Councilmember Stackfleth, that I actually listen.
Your logical
That's all.
Yes.
Forget my voice again. Can all of this just be solved with somebody working there, with an employee? One employee, somebody that actually is in the kitchen, and then the other hours is a caretaker, whether they're just keeping the place up? Because my business is next to a bed and breakfast, and as much as I hate those two owners, and this is well known throughout town, this is not a surprise, they take care of their place. They're always doing something. So if this is just sitting there, can this all just be solved with an employee? Just even if he's there to scare the homeless off that are in the area all summer long. I mean, just, can we get around that with an employee? Just somebody 8 hours a day, whether that's 6 in the morning till 2 or 3 check-in, is that an option with this? And then it's a bed and breakfast because we have an on-site somebody? Because if the owners are living out of town, yeah, that sounds like a STR to me. But can this be solved with an employee? Two employees over 7 days or something.
I do think, and I'm going to speak for Sandra, so jump in if you want, but I have seen Sandra's represented Airbnbs, and she does maintain that sort of thing. So I do think
forgive me, I'm not talking so much about the property management as much as just an employee that works for the owners, that they have a, paid employee, and then that's a way around this, because now you have somebody there that maybe has some idea of how to work with the different diets, but they're just there. Then it's...
And I think that moving forward, once we get the proper language in here, we can add these things in, but as of now, the pickle stands that it's not in there. But anyone else?
Well, the requirement has always been to have a occupying owner or manager, an occupant, somebody who's actually living there who is either a manager or the owner. And of course, you point out the perfect example of...
The idiots next door to me.
The Dream Inn.
The Dream Inn, yes. Where there is an owner living on site and providing meals. And that was what we anticipated would be a bed and breakfast in Mount Shasta. So it would be easy for us to say, let's ignore the ordinance and let's ignore the intent of the ordinance and just do something different. We could do, if we do that with one ordinance, we can do it with any number of other ordinances, but that's not what we're here for.
Well, I'm not trying to get around an ordinance. I'm just saying, is this something that solves the problem in the future? I mean, like tonight, obviously it won't work, but if this is where they can, how long would the appeal process, is there another appeal process even if we say no?
Yeah, John, I think...
If they come forward saying we've changed all this?
I think that they could have a live-in manager.
I'd like to share my thoughts on the matter. I think we started this meeting stating that we as a council are a pro-growth council and community. And the short-term moratorium was set into place with a city planner and an active planning commission, and that has since changed, and that's gone on too long, in my opinion, and that needs some attention. Also, the semantics, I am not hearing anywhere in the ordinance that it's a mandatory live-in occupied. I think that the parking is there in case there is an owner, but it does not state that it's a requirement. And none of these issues are the problem of the owner. So it is my opinion that we let these people run their business in our community.
So we are,
And immediately also get Kyle to close this loophole that says...
Yes, it needs attention.
Going forward, bed and breakfasts must have an owner-occupied person there because, and to your point, Tim, I think we're violating the intent of the original ordinance, but I don't think we're violating the letter of the actual ordinance because it's not stated specifically, which is why they weren't told specifically that they needed to do this. And as much as I don't like short-circuiting the short-term moratorium, I don't think we can shoot this down after hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment and being told they're doing the right thing. I think it comes down to we screwed up.
well, actually, there's a question of, this has come up a number of times in the law where there is a developer, for example, who develops property in a way that wasn't authorized, and it's challenged, and the developer keeps developing the property, putting money into it, so by the time it gets to court, the argument is, or to a decision maker, the argument is, oh, but we spent all this money, how can you say no to us now, even if we don't comply with the requirements? So
Was it challenged earlier?
Huh?
Was this ever challenged earlier? And I think the answer is no.
Well, so I want to go back to that other question that we have to deal with tonight, and that is, we have a short-term rental ordinance, or moratorium, rather, a short-term rental moratorium of not allowing any more short-term rentals. Short-term rental, certainly, this proposal is for 2 weeks or less. How is this not a short-term rental?
So again, getting back into categorization, so it's different form of logical analysis. In Mount Shasta, because we don't have a code heading that says short-term rentals yet, apparently, and that's what has been delayed ad nauseum. We do have explicit B&B code language that is unclear about the things that we're talking about and debating. This falls under that code, and that's why we're here discussing it as a discrete item and so forth. If you want to create new code regarding short-term rentals, that's a general code with different categories underneath that: bed and breakfast, medium-term rentals, rentals with sporting equipment that come with the place, like Lodge has, type of thing. We can do that, but that's not what we have now. And someone was moving forward thinking they were doing good. They were operating in good faith, apparently. And I guess the Planning Commission was too, and the planner, and then it all ended abruptly. So that's why we're here.
Anyone want to put a motion on the floor?
Yeah. So I'll move in favor of the appellant and grant the conditional use permit and CEQA exemption. Don't know if by title only is appropriate, but that's the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 You asking for the nays?
Sorry, all opposed?
Nay,
I'm like, I didn't hear you.
for the reasons stated.
Okay. And similarly, number 11.
I'll be right back. I have to deal with an emergency.
Okay. Should we take a 5-minute recess, John? Would that give you enough time? No? Okay. Okay. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute recess. You have 2 more minutes. It's a problem.
Well, we can pay them
want the money.
and call it planning assistant. We'll have a better luck finding it.
So how does that fit for something like that?
So I would just say it's a planner, and you know, when it gets right down to the time, it's like semantics. We just like we'll write a job description as a planner and call it planning assistant, so we can get somebody under that pay range.
Like a planning assistant?
We could. But the thing is, what we pay for a planner is really what we pay a planning assistant.
So if you want to shoot me how you think I should explain it, I'll see if I can plug that in.
Okay. I'll do that tomorrow.
Yep. And I'll see if I can plug that in. Because a planner is one of the things that I have a problem with now is we don't have a planner.
Yep. It is.
So that's impacted our garden tag stuff.
Yeah. So,
All right, let's resume with item 11, public hearing, CEQA exemption adoption, Mountainside Cannabis Architectural Review Appeal. I think Kyle is going to start this off for us also.
Hi, yeah.
Yes.
If I could back up a moment, the new court interpretation of the Brown Act requires that 2 separate actions be taken for the project approval itself, and then another for the adoption of the CEQA findings, the exemption in the case of the last project. So I think, could we get another action taken on that?
So I kind of get what you're saying. So you need 2 separate motions versus the one where I combined the 2.
Yeah, so one for the
CEQA
approval.
exemption? So
Yeah, so
what-
one for,
So I approve the appeal, I motion to approve the appeal. I have to go back to the title. So, all right, so the first part of that motion was to approve the conditional use permit. And then the second part was to, and the CEQA exemption, so I made them one motion. So, opinions of the experts? So do I need to do 2 separate ones? Should I do 2 separate ones right now, and we'll void the first motion?
Yeah, we'll void the first one.
Okay, so as we move forward we're going back to agenda item number 10, I move to, in favor of the appellant, to approve the conditional use permit for the Vulleswamy Bed and Breakfast project.
Need a second. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
Moving on, part 2 of this agenda approval process. So I move to approve. I find in favor of. I move in favor of the appellant and move to approve the CEQA exemption adoption for the Vulleswamy Bed and Breakfast project.
Second.
To the chair, question?
Yes.
Is this the time for questions? Just for conversation? Because I don't understand the parking changes that were made.
The property is categorically exempt under CEQA. So there's no requirement for CEQA review because of the exemption.
So you're telling me I should have voted no on the first part because of the parking changes that don't appear to meet state code for the conditional for the project approval?
We're now on the CEQA.
Well, right, so what you're telling me is that part of
CEQA.
it was on the first part, not the second part.
That's not related to the second part.
Okay. Never mind.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 He did with his...
Sorry, my voice still. Go blue.
Okay. All opposed were none, right? All opposed? None.
On CEQA.
On CEQA? We're all
No,
in favor
We all voted in favor of the,
of the second part.
yes.
Okay, Kyle, I think we are ready for you.
Great. Yeah, thanks for doing that. Yeah, so this next agenda item, this project appeal is for the architectural review and CEQA exemption adoption for the development of a 3,200 square foot cannabis cultivation, food-based manufacturing, and distribution facility. The proposed development includes a small building, water storage tank, paved entrance, parking lot, landscaping, fencing, water well, and sewer connection. The building's design includes a pitched roof with architectural composition roofing, horizontal fiber cement lap sidings and paneling, and a wooden covered entry with neutral paint colors and natural accent materials, and required lighting and security features. So the facility will be used for cannabis cultivation, food-based manufacturing, and distribution. The facility will operate with the main hours of 9 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. every day of the week with 3 full-time employees. The facility will not be open to the public, and the project will connect to the city wastewater system and will install and utilize a well and storage tank for water service, as the project is located outside city water services. The project is located at 3839 Spring Hill Road in the C2 General Commercial Zone and the Commercial Center Land Use Designation on an undeveloped parcel near the Abrams Lake Road exit of Highway 5. So this project went before the Planning Commission initially on August 9th. That iteration of the project was denied by the Commission with the request that changes be made to the design elements and submittal package. Planning Commission feedback included adding design features to break up the long walls, providing additional screening, providing additional details of landscaping, drainage, lighting, and materials, and providing additional details to the site plan. The applicant made the requested changes, and revised project materials were received by the city on September 26th. So the project went before the Planning Commission again on October 18th. In that hearing, the commissioners identified an issue with the parking access details on the site plan. The site plan driveway and parking lot dimensions were out of compliance with design standards for accessible driveway and parking space access. So the commissioners requested that the site plan be revised to correct the issue and to bring the parking dimensions into compliance before they could vote to approve the project. Additionally, the commissioners requested to see a contour plan of the site to provide additional stormwater details. A motion was passed to rule on the project at a future meeting with the requested items. Aside from the aforementioned issues, the commission found that the amended design features of the proposed site and building were positive and in conformance with the city's design standards. This project was found to qualify for a categorical exemption to CEQA, Class 3 new construction or conversion of small structures, as the project consists of a new commercial building of less than 10,000 square feet in an urbanized area that is not environmentally sensitive. So with the additions and revisions made to this project's design, the proposed facility and site will adhere to the design standards outlined in the city's design guidelines and highlighted by the Planning Commission. Necessary site plan revisions to parking dimensions can be requested through conditions of approval and will regardless need to be verified prior to a building permit being issued. And so staff recommends adopting the exemption and approving the project with conditions of approval.
Thank you, Kyle. Okay. Clarifying questions, council? Go ahead, Tim.
Kyle, if I understand correctly, what you're saying is this project is exempt from CEQA, and the arguments that have been raised by some persons about CEQA really are not relevant because of the exemption, correct?
Yes, as this is design review, it's also my opinion, based on CEQA case law, that projects that are only subject to design review are not required to be subject to CEQA. That said, because this project can also fairly easily qualify for a categorical exemption, I just went ahead and have prepared an exemption filing for that as well, just to kind of fully cover bases there.
Well, keeping it simple, under California Code of Regulations, Title 14, Section 15303, sub C, I think it is, or sub 3.
Yeah.
It's exempt, CEQA exempt. So the question then comes down to the architectural design, and there was some concern that where the ADA parking is right now doesn't comply, and there should be some sort of minor modification to the plan to deal with that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then the question is whether we can, whether we need to send it back to Planning Commission to make that minor modification, or simply approve the project with the understanding that that minor modification will be made prior to the final approval or finding the building permit. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
So thanks, Tim. That handled my first concerns. So the other concern brought up, I believe, had to do with runoff, toxic runoff from the parking lot. Yeah. So how does that fit into this discussion, is it a legitimate concern, or is it such a small project?
I can weigh in on that.
Yeah.
So CEQA is not required for this project. It's design review. And, in this case, the Planning Commission, in my opinion, has overreached and gone into looking at, a full review of the project. So they've kind of overstepped their bounds. And the idea here is, after reviewing this with our City Attorney, John Kenny, is that we probably need a refresher with the Planning Commission beginning the first of the year to make sure that we're not overstepping the bounds and going into areas that are not consistent with architectural review.
That's clearly going on, so to me, there's no question
Yes.
about that. No, just getting back to the situation with the parking, similarly with runoff or containment of interior processes, isn't that, again, just part of a building code? You have to prove that you have some sort of system to contain toxic runoff within the building, and then the parking lot is going to be a low-volume parking lot. I don't see how those issues can't be resolved in the building permit.
Well, my question is, what runoff? I mean, we've got...
No, I agree.
Yeah, no, so here's the thing is, we have a use that is, this use is zoned by right. And so it's been studied as part of the general plan. So this is an acceptable use, and the idea that the Planning Commission is coming in and saying that, this group that has made complaints, that you can come in after the fact and say, well, what about all these, potential what-if scenarios, the sky is falling? You can say that about any project and kill just about anything if that's your rationale.
No, I'm just saying, couldn't those particular concerns be handled at the building permit stage if there's any violation of building permit laws and state laws or whatever?
You're required as part of the building code to show that you're handling all stormwater on site.
Yeah, you would be handled the same way as if it was a single-family residential
Exactly.
property or
Yeah.
project.
You're finding out a way, either handle it on site or to get it to a storm drain. That's it, just like any other project.
This project, because of its size and circumstance, falls within that 15303 exemption, just as a single-family residential development would fall into the CEQA categorical exemption.
Any other questions? Is there an appellant present that wants to speak? Yeah, please. You get 15 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Corinne Mueller, and I live in Shasta, and I have been asked to come before you and speak a little bit to the issue this evening. First of all, I want to say thank you to our new mayor for having us and address our other Congress, city council members as well. Your agenda apparently had a timeline that was submitted by the owners of this property that was somewhat lengthy, and even preparing it was somewhat arduous and maybe didn't make a lot of sense because so much was going back and forth and up and down, and it was, monumental note-taking to try and even keep track of what the score was. And it sounds like you all have a good understanding of the fact that that's going on. And so I don't want to belabor that. But I would like to talk to you just a little bit on the big picture item, if you will. Scott and Ken, Scott Lassen and Ken Wiles are the owners of this project, and they own the land on Spring Hill Road. The land being zoned commercial C2, you obviously, listening to your comments, you have a very good understanding of what that means. So let's skip over that. Seeming as though when we get that far, we say, well, gosh, there just don't seem to be very many problems here. But this whole project has been just befuddled with problems from one day to the next. And just three of them I'd like to just highlight for you a little bit. One is that 2 hold letters and 2 denial letters, and you know what those are better than I do, I'm sure, were issued between October of 2021 and February of 2022, causing great consternation because it's really hard to understand why being told one thing at a planning commission meeting and then getting subsequent letters like this would even apply. So then the design review included some inaccurate information given to the owners, asking for information that wasn't needed, and it felt like it was just a keep us busy gathering paperwork kind of exercise. Perhaps it was that some of the commission didn't know what to do next or didn't understand what their role was, or people were coming in and going out in temporary and interim, and it could have been mass confusion. What I'm here for is to try and help us get to the point where we can get past mass confusion and get to decisions and start moving on. That's the whole goal here. Most recently, on August 10th of this year, there was a Zoom call meeting that included a city planner, the city manager, and a public works director. And there was no mention of a contour plan at that meeting. Lots of other things came up. But subsequent to that meeting, suddenly everybody's talking about a contour plan. And you have to scratch your head and go, why wasn't it important then? Contour plans are kind of interesting. My husband uses them in his business. I know a little bit about them. Most people that need to work with those plans go to Google Earth, zero in on what it is they're looking at. That computer system and whatnot gives them all kinds of measurements and details for altitude and latitude and longitude and curves and water and rocks and all kinds of things that they love to see. Saves them a whole lot of time. Driving out to a project, getting out, putting on their boots and tromping around and taking measurements is very costly. So they use Google Earth. Kind of makes me wonder why maybe our planning department at Mount Shasta doesn't use Google Earth. On a personal note, Mountainside Cannabis LLC has been in the works since August 2020. That's 2 years and 3 months for if anybody's counting. Scott and Ken talked about building something they could be proud of, okay? Something that would benefit others, but specifically others in need of medical help. And here is the crux of the issue, I think. Both Ken and Scott lost their fathers to cancer. Both Ken and Scott helped their fathers endure the horrible pain and suffering caused by cancer treatments and therapies. And the one thing that came to the rescue to help them be able to eat and reduce the pain and live a little longer and have a little better quality of life was the use of cannabis. So now you know the motivation. Kind of a personal story, but I think maybe it's time to let you know. They started looking around for places to be able to build this business that they imagined. They found Mount Shasta was issuing cannabis licenses in 2016, which is when the California law took effect. So they decided this would be the place to start. They wrote a business plan, something neither of them had ever done before. From there, and if I can turn my page, I will find the rest of my notes here. From there, they located some investors in only 3 days, local folks, you know, who know and understand the importance of a business like this. They found property and received approval on January 4th, 2021 from the city planner, Juliana. Probably most of you know her. If somebody doesn't or somebody that's listening doesn't know her, apparently she wrote and implemented the cannabis industry protocols in Mount Shasta originally. So realizing that the original property that they chose wasn't probably the best, they kept on looking, and then they found Spring Hill, and that turned out to be perfect. It was isolated, it's negligible in noise. If there's any noise being produced by lights on in a building or anything, there's no neighbors next door to hear it, right? It's in an industrial neighborhood, and it's well outside the state-required buffer zone, which is applicable to this kind of business. That was another key factor that was really important. The original investors unfortunately backed out because Mount Shasta apparently was unwilling to clarify the requirements of installing a well. The original investors said, can't go there if we can't install a well. So the two boys found a developer that purchased the land in Scott and Ken's names. Then they began plan development. So we went to a building site plan, an architectural plan, a design plan, you know all the rigmarole, one plan after another. But they got it done. Everything was going along smooth, and then chaos started to happen. And you'll see that on the timeline that was submitted to you. It was like one thing after another. Nobody seemed to know which way was up. And the boys, the young men, I call them boys because they're so much younger than I am, they got a little confused about, well, what are we supposed to do now? Well, this person says that person says this. We don't know. So the constant change of personnel at the city probably compounded that a little bit. We understand that. But another thing came along, just a simple illustration. All of a sudden, somewhere down the line in the processes, they wanted a live scan. Now, I'm heavily involved in soccer for children in this community in Siskiyou County, and I can tell you that every father who wants to coach his 5-year-old to every father who wants to coach his 19-year-old has to get a live scan, okay? We do them every year, twice a year. We have them available twice a year. We do them in less than an hour. But for some reason at Mount Shasta, it takes a month. Just to give you an example. Putting money together required getting an investor. The agreement that was first established for the investor that came on board was that payment would be paid in February of 2023. That allowed these young people to be able to have 2 years to get the project approval done, the building built, the ground ready, the crops grown, delivered to buyers, make the sales, get the money in the bank, and make the payment on time. That was the goal. Neither of them had any idea that there was going to be 2 years worth of spinning around in circles to even get to this point where we are today. Now there's apparently talk of hiring a civil engineer. Okay, well, if we gotta hire a civil engineer, we do. We've already got $250,000 invested in this project. That seemed to be important for the other projects we listened to earlier this evening. Money just flows out much faster than it flows in. Tessa knows that. Okay. So I've given you an overview as best as I could. Tried not to bore you with too many details. Details that have been provided to your planning department over and over again. Helped you to understand that it's time to move forward, which you all say you want to do, and I like that. You want to get new businesses and be proactive. So we say, enough spinning around in the swamp, no more wash, rinse, repeat. Let's kind of please vote to approve this application. Direct your city building inspector to meet us out on the property, okay? He or she, together with Scott and Kenneth and their builder, they have a builder ready to go. They can dig dirt, review plans, make necessary adjustments, figure out how the parking goes in. I mean, I don't know, but they can do that. Put in the stakes, bring out the equipment. In other words, let's get started building the project and making things happen positively for Mount Shasta and this community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Please don't leave yet. We might have some questions for you.
Sure.
And you're now hired to come and speak upon any city behalf because that was a great storytelling performance.
Thank you. I'm going to grab my water.
Okay. Counselors, any questions? Any questions? Maybe, yeah.
Well, I could get into an apologetic mode, but I think that's inappropriate. Thank you for sticking with us.
Sure.
John?
Just a comment that unfortunately you went through the same thing that I did on a certain level that way, to where you were told, fix these 10 things, you fix the 10 things, then you get told there's 13 more new things, and then you fix those 13 new things, and then they come back to you going, whoa, what's your building made of? Now you've got to fireproof it from a chain link fence because it's only 7 feet away. That was what I went through. You know, that same kind of incompetence as to whereas how do you not ask on the first design review what the building is made of? It's on the third blueprint submittal. So unfortunately, you guys dealt with everything I've complained about with this process in the 4 years that made me run for city council that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, trust me, I'm voting yes for you guys.
Thank you, John.
You know, you're a victim of the incompetence that unfortunately I was too. Mine was more at a county level. Unfortunately, yours was at Teresa. So.
Thank you very much, and I will mimic what my fellow councilmen have said, and thank you for sticking with us. And I'm sorry that this is happening, but thank you for bringing it to our attention. This needs to stop, so thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, we are officially opening up public hearing, which is public comment for this agenda item. Anyone in the audience wish to speak? Anyone online? And we are closing public hearing. Discussion or motion?
I propose that we adopt the project findings that are on page 62 and 63 of the agenda packet with the conditions of approval that is set forth on page 63.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, do we need a California, okay, so second motion, find in favor of the appellant regarding CEQA exemption for the project Mountainside Cannabis on Spring Hill Road.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, and item number 12, salary increases for represented public works, police, and dispatchers.
Aye.
Our finance director isn't with us, so Todd, will you give the honors?
Yes. So in the past 6 months or so, department heads and unrepresented employees and represented fire employees have had their pay raised benchmark to the city of Weed. And The Teamsters have the option of opening their contract if they see that they're not being paid parity with the rest of the employees with the city, and they've opted to do that. And so this proposal makes them whole and brings them up to the same type of benchmarking with the city of Weed.
Questions?
Don, I have only one question, which has to do with the, on page 101 of the agenda packet, it says additional yearly increases previously negotiated are rescinded. Please explain that.
I've got to find that page.
Okay.
Do you want a second question? This might be simpler. Yeah, so that has to do with the CBA. He wants to know if the CBA increases are rescinded. That's complicated to me. He would be rescinding previously negotiated union contract. But I have a simple question. The 178, is that 178,000 in the first year or spread out over 5 years?
That's the first year.
Over the first year.
First year.
Yep.
So I'm still going to go back to the
Yep.
101 because we can't unilaterally, I believe, change the wages that we negotiated with the bargaining units unless we get them there to sign off. So we can't do that unilaterally. I just want to get a clarification of what this means.
Well,
The
I mean,
intention is.
you know, the option in the Teamsters contract is to reopen negotiations if it's found that unrepresented employees and others in the city the Teamsters are not being paid parity with the rest of the employees with the city. So I guess I'm not following your line of logic. And I don't have that page, so.
Go ahead. I'm going to hand it to you.
Thank you. So, yes. So what this does moving forward is it sets this rate for this year, and this is set in stone, you know, unless we got to a point where we were raising everybody else's salary again and there was a severe parity issue.
It makes reference, I think it makes reference to future increases, and that is, and too bad that Muriel's not here to clarify. So I'm going to ask you to try to clarify. So if we take the action that's proposed tonight, how does it affect the bargaining units and the MOUs that we entered into?
So the yearly increases, I'm assuming what they're talking about are cost of living increases. This just allows us to adjust salaries based on a benchmark with weed. So any increases that were set as part of the contract are now rescinded. We're just bringing them up to parity with weed. And if they chose to try to negotiate annual increases as cost of living, that would have to come at a different time.
Okay, so for clarification, what we would be doing is increasing the hourly wages, hourly wages, I think, to be in parity with weed, and those increases are higher than we previously negotiated, correct? So we would certainly not expect the bargaining units to object to that because they'd be making more money.
Yep.
But I don't think that we can, and I don't have a legal opinion on that from the city attorney, but I don't think that we can just do that unilaterally and say we're ignoring the MOUs, that they don't apply anymore.
Yeah, I agree with Tim. So isn't this really more a matter of giving direction to staff to reopen negotiations regarding, well, I call it a CBA, but I guess MOU with these represented employees with a predetermined numbers, so it would be a rather quick negotiation, I would imagine, but it would have to be a matter of redoing
It could just be an amendment to the
agreement.
existing
Or an
MOU.
amendment, but you just,
Yeah. No,
we're just
that's-
going to
you're
throw it
right.
out there, or?
But the way this is written is that any previous negotiations are rescinded, meaning we go back, we benchmark this to weed, and if there were yearly increases that were negotiated before, that's off the table for now unless that's renegotiated.
I think we're all saying the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what previous amounts being rescinded means is that our previous negotiations would be moot and these new
Correct.
ones would come in, but we need to make it.
Correct.
Either
An
amended
amendment.
contract or amended MOU formally,
Formally, yeah.
or a totally new contract, whatever is appropriate.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay, open up for public comment. Anyone in the audience wish to speak?
We don't have any public comment as long as you understand what he just conveyed to you. We had a 3-year contract. We have the ability to go in and reopen negotiations, which we've done. So
So this would
is
be in lieu of that?
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone online? Okay, close public comment and back to council. Yes, sir.
When I started on council 10 years ago, we were coming out of the 28 recession and budgets were tight. Cost of living increases weren't even happening for a while. It was really tight. I don't see that any of us would want to pay the city's employees as much as we possibly can. But here are some headline numbers that I think everybody should understand. And to think of your checkbook. This year, in your checkbook, you're going to lose $500,000 relative to the balance you had in your checkbook when we approve these raises, which I think we're headed to do. The next year, we'll lose $350,000 to $400,000 in our general fund, our checkbook, that we write predominantly salaries out of. The year after that, we'll lose around $200,000. And the year after that, we'll lose about $100,000. It is very likely that we will not break even on a budget for the next 4 and potentially even 5 years, depending how this recession materializes or doesn't. And again, as I said, I think we're moving forward with this, but this is a very unusual situation. How can we possibly lose what's going to be $1.2 million, $1.4 million? Well, the answer is because our checkbook balance is unbelievably high because we had all kinds of money come in from all kinds of places. But that means, like, for the next 4 to 5 years, there won't be any raises. Any cost of living increases, it would likely mean that because we're underwater for the next 4 to 5 years. And that's a pickle. We've not done that before, at least in the 10 years I've been here. And this is an unusual situation that if we all approve this, will be large increases in salaries. But then we go underwater. What the finance director was going to tell you was we lose $500,000 this year and $300 to $350 the next year, and et cetera, as rates of our other taxes continue to increase, eventually they'll catch up. The recession's an unknown. I just thought I should be clear, at least from my perspective, about what this level of salary increase now means, given our budget, our checkbook. Because the general fund, it's just like a checkbook. It's got a balance in it. Thank goodness it's big balance. But we're going to run negative. We're going to run deficits for the next 3-4 years. I just think that's something that we should all be aware of as we head forward with this, because I think we're going to head forward with this. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Tim?
Well, I'm supportive of the staff's proposal to do an amendment to the MOUs to provide for the higher pay and to bring the executed MOUs back to the City Council for approval. And I do recognize there's a very valid concern of spending more money than we bring in, and that we may be doing that for some time, and hopefully our increases in revenues will help to offset the over expenditures. I'm reasonably confident that that's going to happen, but I'm also an optimist.
I would like to say that although there's no motion on the table yet, but our council has been giving a whole lot of raises this year, and it's uncomfortable and it makes us really analyze the future, and we hope that it'll all turn out, but I'm really proud of us for honoring our people that work for us, so thank you.
Through the chair? All right, so yeah, I'm hesitant about the budget impacts of this, but ultimately in favor of the increase. I think there are serious morale and other issues at stake here. However, we need to be very pro-growth oriented, and 2-year processes for relatively small projects needs to stop. We need people who want to set up businesses here or continue or alter businesses here. We need to help them accomplish their objectives versus what we heard tonight. These weren't the first examples of this type of slow process. John mentioned his, for instance. I can mention many more. Delaying a project by 2 years means you're delaying revenues for 2 years. Okay, so that attitude of no growth, negative growth has got to stop. If you want properly paid city employees doing stellar jobs, then you have to pay them accordingly, and we need to grow our revenues in order to maintain that. The alternative is to not grow, have to lay people off, and then not have maintenance of city services. So for those in the no growth, negative growth attitude, think about that. We will have less police, less public works employees struggling just to get to that next leaky pipe type of thing, or having to categorize the calls, the police calls, and the times of response getting longer. Those would be what happens. And I've lived in cities where that happens, New York being that city. And that place in the 70s, it started in the 60s, but it happened through the 70s, lost revenue due to a number of different reasons, and everything was just falling apart. I don't think anybody wants to go there. So think about promoting Mount Shasta as a place to do business, as a place to visit, and a place to
live versus the opposite, which happens too much here.
I just wanted to speak to the positivity that I think things are going to get better, going to be fine for the town, just from my own business
John, I'm
standpoint.
having a hard time hearing
Okay,
you.
sorry, it's my voice. Go blue. Saturday was rough. Just on my voice, the game was awesome. Anyways, but as I'm saying, I think town is heading towards the economic boom because I think the promotional videos that are going out are working. I have had, in my 8th year of business, this has been my best year ever. The Friday tree lighting ceremony was probably one of my top 3 business days in 8 years because town was going off. November is always the worst month of the year, and I've had my best November ever. And I doubt I'm the only one. I really see that. I don't see the raises as an issue because I see income coming in. I think we're starting to show growth and economic boom from the investments of getting more people to come here over the last couple of years. Just because, like I said, in 8 years I've had my best year ever, and other people have had phenomenal summers, phenomenal springs. Last winter, if we get this snowstorm and can open for Christmas, everybody's going to be really happy this month. So, but yeah, I think it's working towards what John said that way, of just like the pro-growth idea is working. The naysayers are getting older and ignored more, so it's working.
All right, let's get these workers' a motion on the table.
All right, so I'm not really sure about the wording on this, so feel free to interrupt over there at the staff table, but I believe the motion is to approve. I would like the motion to be motion to approve an adjustment to the salary range for represented employees of the Public Works, Police, and Dispatchers Departments of the City of Mount Shasta. As part of this motion, it's expected that the increase will be retroactive to July 1st of 2022, and that increases in the previous MOU CBA will be, so-called COLAs will be rescinded.
As a result of amendment to the MOUs?
As an amendment to the existing MOU.
And that the MOUs will come back for our approval, correct?
Secondly, it's expected that this is the opening, a process that will conclude with a formally certified and voted upon new MOU.
Second.
Get all that, Catherine?
I was just going to ask the same thing.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations. Okay, there are no outside meetings. Future agenda items appearing on the agenda within the next 60 to 90 days. A, first reading of the short-term rental ordinance. That will be lovely. 12/12/22. B, special meeting to appoint Recreation and Parks District Board Member. 1/9 should be 23. C, special meeting to appoint Planning Commissioners. 1/23/23. D, special meeting to appoint committee members. 2/20/23. D, discussion and possible action, McLeod Avenue parking prohibition to be determined. F, feasibility and cost study for one-way couplet, TBD. G, discussion and possible action, sidewalk maintenance, responsibility and options to be determined. I, approval of RFP to seek companies specializing in tax sharing agreements to be determined. J, resolution approving annexation of various properties to be determined. Do we have any others to add?
Well, I have a question about items B, C, and D. Why do we need special meetings for appointment? Why can't we do that at a regular meeting?
Typically in the past, we've held
I think that happens right before the meeting, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Any agenda items to add?
There was a proposal by Lewis, by Lou, that,
Larry?
huh?
Larry?
By Larry, yes, thank you, by Larry Stock, that we might consider putting him on a future agenda to discuss the insurance rates and insurance situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, agreed?
Agreed.
Okay.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, I just want to know how the rest of the council feels about trying to plug that hole in our bed and breakfast laws such that we make it clear
I think we need
to
a plug.
everybody that
Probably sooner the better on that.
yeah, there's an on-site person.
I would support that. Clarification.
John?
Yeah, clarifying the current B&B code. Let's do that.
It's clarifying the definition, and that's an easy fix.
Okay, we'll see.
Any others?
No.
Okay.
That's a lot.
John? Okay. Meeting adjourned. It's heavy.
Don't run away, John. I need a signature from you. Oh, you're
Yeah, we fired very quickly.
not you.